You know someone like this. Maybe you are someone like this. The person who cannot let an argument end without winning it, who corrects people even when it doesn't matter, who feels a specific physical discomfort when someone else is wrong, and they haven't fixed it yet. Most people assume this is arrogance, but the psychology tells a completely different story. Needing to be right is almost never about being right. It's about something much older and much more vulnerable than that. Here's the distinction that changes everything. Arrogance is indifference to other people's opinions. The person who always needs to be right is not indifferent to other people's opinions. They are acutely, desperately sensitive to them. The need to be right is not confidence. It is the opposite of confidence. It is a continuous, exhausting effort to maintain a sense of self that feels like it could collapse the moment someone else is allowed to be correct. Psychologists studying this pattern consistently find that beneath the certainty, beneath the arguing, the correcting, the refusal to concede, is a person who is deeply, quietly afraid of being wrong. Not because being wrong is bad, but because somewhere in their history, being wrong meant something much more serious than just being incorrect. Here's where it starts. For many people who always need to be right, their early environment taught them a specific lesson. Being wrong was not just an intellectual position. It was evidence of inadequacy, of worthlessness, of being the kind of person who didn't deserve respect, love, or inclusion. In families where mistakes were punished harshly, where being corrected was humiliating, where admitting you were wrong was used against you, the brain learned to treat being wrong as a genuine threat. Not a social inconvenience, a survival-level danger. Psychologists call this shame-based perfectionism, the belief that your worth as a person is contingent on your correctness, your performance, your not being wrong. And the defense against shame is certainty. If I am always right, I can never be exposed as inadequate. If I never concede, I never have to feel that. The arguing isn't about the argument, it's a shield. Here's the neurological layer. Research by neuroscientist Jonas Kaplan at USC found that when people encounter information that contradicts their deeply held beliefs, their brain activates the same regions as a physical threat to the body. Not just discomfort, not just frustration, the same threat response. For people who have built their identity around being knowledgeable, competent, and correct, a challenge to their position is processed as an attack on the self. Their brain is not evaluating whether the other person has a good point. Their brain is defending against a threat to their existence. This is why logic doesn't work in these arguments. You're not debating an idea. You're fighting someone's nervous system, and the nervous system will almost always win. Here's the layer that surprises people most. People who always need to be right are often people who experienced significant unpredictability or lack of control in their early lives. Environments where things didn't make sense, where the rules changed without warning, where what was true one day was denied the next. In those environments, establishing what is correct, what is true, what actually happened, how things really are, becomes a way of creating stability. If I can be certain about facts, I can be certain about something. If I can win the argument, I can establish that reality is what I say it is, and not what someone else is trying to tell me it is. Psychologists call this epistemic control, the need to manage and defend one's perception of reality as a coping strategy against the anxiety of uncertainty. The person who always needs to be right is not trying to dominate you. They are trying to hold their world together. So here's what's actually happening when someone always needs to be right. Being wrong activates a shame response built in an environment where mistakes had real costs. Their brain treats challenges to their beliefs as physical threats. The nervous system takes over from the rational mind. And maintaining correctness is a way of creating certainty in a world that once felt deeply unpredictable. If you recognize this in someone you know, understand that arguing with them is never going to reach the fear underneath the certainty. The only thing that reaches it is safety. When a person feels genuinely safe, when they trust that being wrong won't cost them respect, belonging, or love, the need to always be right begins to lose its grip. Not immediately, not easily, but the grip loosens. And if you recognize this in yourself, the question worth asking is not, why do I always need to be right? It's, What do I believe will happen if I'm not? Because the answer to that question is where the real work is. Needing to be right is not a character flaw. It is a coping strategy built for a world where being wrong had consequences that most people never have to face. The person who argues longest and loudest is almost never the most confident person in the room. They are the most frightened and the most tired. If this describes someone in your life, or a pattern you recognize in yourself, share it with someone who needs to see it. And subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the behaviors, the patterns, the things about being human that nobody explains.